There was a time not so long ago when the world seemed to move to the rhythm of the sun, and the hours had substance, weight, and silence. A time when dawn wasn't just the automatic triggering of alarms and notifications, but the slow awakening of the earth under the golden light, the opening of windows to let in the wind and the murmurs of life. It was a time when the morning carried the freshness of a true beginning, not the accumulated weariness of days that rush past one another without distinguishing themselves. Today, however, we live imprisoned by a rhythm that is not human but mechanical, a rhythm that doesn't pulse with the heart, but throbs like an invisible whip, marking each second with the rigidity of one who demands our existence. And so it is that under the banner of an invented virtue, haste, humanity sets off on a blind race, forgetting that there is no finish line that compensates for the price of lost breath, forgetting that the path, when traveled without attention, is nothing more than a blur of useless memories. For we were taught from an early age that being fast is being better, that acting without pause is synonymous with efficiency, that time is an enemy to be defeated, not an ally to be understood. This invisible doctrine, planted in our minds like a poisonous seed, makes us confuse activity with purpose, occupation with meaning, acceleration with life. We grow up believing that every moment of inactivity is a waste, as if rest were a sin and idleness a crime. And it is in this profound deception that a civilization arises that confuses movement with progress, speed with intelligence, urgency with importance. The result is a world that always lives one step ahead of the present, incapable of savoring the now, incapable of remaining in the instant that exists. We chase goals we don't understand, pressured by deadlines we didn't choose, devouring our own time like someone consuming a rushed meal, oblivious to its taste only to get up and continue. We live under the illusion that the faster we go, the further we'll go, but we ignore the fact that haste, sooner or later, exacts a toll, and that toll is the loss of the soul of each moment. Perhaps one day, when we look back, we'll realize that it wasn't slowness that delayed us, but haste that stole us. But haste doesn't build solid bridges, it erects fragile structures, full of invisible cracks, which sooner or later collapse on those who placed their trust in them. And when they fall, there's no time to calmly rebuild them, because the same system that rushed us to build them rushes us to repair them, forcing us to build new bridges with the same haste that will condemn them to the same fate. Haste prevents roots from sinking into the earth, and that's why our trees, our ideas, our relationships, our very lives are knocked down by the first harsh wind. Without roots, there's no stability, only the illusion of standing firm, until reality rips us from the ground. Haste robs us of the present because it keeps us always projected toward a future that never arrives, toward a promise that lives eternally in the next goal, the next objective, the next stage. And so life becomes a succession of almosts, an album full of empty pages, where each moment could have been vivid, but was consumed by the eagerness to get somewhere, to meet deadlines, to hit targets, to respond to messages, to not waste time, as if the real wasted time were that spent in contemplation, in sincere dialogue, in laughter that doesn't obey the clock. We live like architects building houses on quicksand, aware of the risk, but blinded by urgency. We create relationships that can't withstand the lack of instant responses, projects that don't survive the first criticism, decisions that are undone as quickly as they were made. Rushing doesn't allow us to heal our wounds, only covers them with improvised bandages, and so we continue bleeding on the inside, smiling on the outside, until our bodies and souls collapse. The cruelest thing is that haste deceives us with small rewards, the immediate satisfaction of completing something, the false relief of crossing off a task from the list. But these victories are fragile, like thin glass. They shatter at the first drop, forcing us to start all over again. Perhaps that's why haste is so dangerous, because it masquerades as efficiency, but in reality, it's wasteful. A waste of energy, creativity, depth, life. And when we finally realize it, we no longer know how to stop. And there's another cruel paradox. Haste, which sells itself as a driver of productivity, is actually the greatest saboteur of quality. We build houses that crack, write books that say nothing, cook flavorless food, make unwise decisions, all because we rush, and in the rush, We lose the essence, the detail, the precision, the soul of what we do. Haste makes us live on unfinished drafts, hurried sketches, poorly drawn plans. She is the artisan who trades patience for haste, thus producing pieces that break before they're even used. And it's not just about work or production. Haste also rots our bonds. Friendships become superficial because there's no time to listen to them. Loves wither because there's no time to cultivate them. Families drift apart because there's no time to simply be together. We live surrounded by voices, but we hear none, surrounded by faces, but we see no one. We talk about connections, but they are instantaneous, disposable, like messages sent without attention and instantly forgotten. The world has convinced us that living slowly is losing, but it fails to realize that it is precisely in slowing down that true victory lies, the victory of feeling, of understanding, of transformation. The most ironic thing is that by rushing so much, we don't arrive sooner. We simply arrive more tired. Haste is the disease that disguises itself as a virtue, and that's why so many wear it proudly, as if it were a medal, when in reality it's a shackle. There are people who no longer know how to walk. They just run, even when there's no danger, even when there's no real rush. And so we spend our lives like someone trying to read a book by flipping through the pages at the speed of the wind. We reach the end without understanding anything. History shows us that humanity's greatest works were the fruits of patience. Cathedrals built over centuries, books written with the care of a goldsmith, scientific discoveries that demanded decades of study. Today, however, we want instant cathedrals, books produced in weeks, cures discovered in days. And we become frustrated when reality insists on reminding us that certain things need time, that maturation cannot be hastened, that beauty is not the product of speed, but of permanence. The problem is that haste has become a system. It's no longer just a personal vice, but an imposed mechanism. The economy demands that we hurry. Companies demand that we hurry. Technology conditions us to expect everything in seconds. We live as if we're always late for something. But that something never reveals itself clearly. It's a race without a destination, where the finish line moves every time we approach. We rush to produce, we produce to consume, we consume to keep rushing. Rest becomes guilt, idleness becomes sin, pause becomes a threat to the system. But there's an even greater danger. When everything is urgent, nothing is truly important. And it's at this point that haste reveals itself not only useless, but destructive. It creates a constant fire mentality where there's no time for analysis, for strategy, for ethics. We make hasty decisions that cost lives. We pass hasty laws that destroy rights. We start hasty wars without considering the consequences. Haste is the mother of irreversible mistakes, and history is full of them. And perhaps deep down, haste is just fear in disguise. Fear of facing silence, because in silence there are no excuses, no distractions, only the echo of one's own consciousness. Fear of facing oneself and realizing that behind all the rushing, there is a void we can't name. Fear of realizing we don't know where we're going, that our route was traced more by the force of invisible currents than by the free choice of our own steps. The truth is that running is more comfortable than stopping, because constant movement gives us the illusion of control, the feeling that we're doing something, even if that something is just spinning in circles. It's easier to run than to stop and admit we're lost, because the act of stopping requires courage, and courage isn't found in speed but in permanence. Stopping means facing the questions we've been avoiding. It means facing the possibility that all the effort, all the haste, all the productivity may not be taking us anywhere that truly matters. So we keep running, like children covering their ears. To avoid hearing an uncomfortable truth. But no map reveals itself to those who don't stop to read it. Direction isn't found amidst chaos, and a compass doesn't point north when it's constantly shaken. You have to stop. You have to breathe. You have to let your heart find its own rhythm, and your mind slow down enough to notice the small clues the path offers. We need to look around and realize that life is happening now, and that it doesn't wait, not because it's fast, but because it's alive. And life has its own rhythm which doesn't obey the commands of the clock. The sunset doesn't rush to please the hurried. The flower doesn't anticipate its blooming to meet deadlines. The river doesn't accelerate its current to reach the sea sooner. The whole world knows the importance of patience, except us, who pride ourselves on living in a hurry. Perhaps the secret lies not in speeding up to catch up with life, but in slowing down to allow it to catch up with us. Therefore, I repeat, as someone writing not only for others but for themselves, haste is not a virtue. It's a well-designed trap, a psychological trick that disguises itself as competence but corrodes the meaning of life from within. Haste is a prison with golden bars, gleaming, seductive, almost enviable in the eyes of those who don't know the feeling of being imprisoned. It seems to lift us up, as if giving us wings, but they are fragile wings that fall apart at the first strong wind. And when we realize it, we no longer fly, we just fall. Quickly, like everything haste produces. If we truly want to live, we must dare to slow down, even if it seems like an act of rebellion in a world obsessed with speed. We must reclaim the right to walk, to choose our pace, to feel the ground beneath our feet without the constant feeling of being behind. We must relearn to perceive time passing not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a companion that guides us, a river we must follow with respect, not try to dominate with brute force. Today, living slowly is an act of courage. It is refusing to accept that productivity is worth more than presence, that results matter more than processes, that arriving quickly is better than arriving well. It's cultivating the lost art of looking into someone's eyes, of listening without rushing to respond, of taking a deep breath before acting, of savoring food before it disappears from your mouth. It's understanding that each moment has a unique flavor, and that once swallowed without feeling, it never returns. Because in the end, when we look back, we won't remember the speed with which we passed through the days. There will be no medals for speed, no applause for the record number of tasks completed. We will remember the intensity with which we lived them, the conversations that marked us, the silences that calmed us, the pauses that revealed who we were. And intensity isn't measured in kilometers per hour, but in depth per moment. It's not how fast we run that defines the greatness of a life, but how deeply we immerse ourselves in it. And only those who have the courage to stop at the edge, take a deep breath, and without rushing, launch themselves truly into it.